we're doing on-form reports, and on-form reports are a fairly substantial part of an application. As you can see on the website here, we've got on-form reports. As I mouse over the various features boxes down the bottom here, these are all on-form reports that are showing up. The news is an on-form report. The overview, just about all of those features there, including, say, the samples window, that is actually an on-form report as well. So I've got set up a fairly simple exercise today. I'll just minimize that. Here is the example of the on-form report that we're going to be building today. It's this is all again done in basic code, big basic code. So as you can see, as I change the client code, I get the various sales and products and unit prices and all of that with some totals at the bottom. And this is essentially two on-form reports. So I'm just going to put the second on-form report. I'm just going to add an on-form report onto the form so you can see how that is done. So the first thing you do is select Report from the window, select Add, press where you click on where you want it to go, and it'll give you an arbitrary name. In this case, R.Report7 gives you an arbitrary width and depth. So you can go into the properties for this on-form report, set up the name that you want it to be in, to have the column span of that, and the column span is the actual width of the container, and the row span is the depth. A process after, if you want to call a program when an active cell on the on-form report is clicked, then that goes through the process after. A report number. You can have up to 10 main reports on each form, though there is in Release 6 the ability to put in, well, actually it was a late version 5 patch that allows you to have subscripts of those. So I could have 1.4 or 1.99, so that gives me 99 sub-reports, if you like, from report number 1. So effectively the number of reports that you can have on a screen is unlimited. The Z-index order, if you want to make sure that the on-form report is in front of all other objects, images and things like that, then you can change the Z-index order. Just put a number in there that's higher than any other number. The default would be 0, so if I put 1 on this, then it would be in front of every other control that's on the form. Alright, so I'll get rid of this one, so because I've already got 2 on the form. So I've got one called r.sales and one called r.totals. In my client code field, I've got a read of 2 records, one client record and one client sales, and I'm going to call the program db.i.webinar 2501, and the after read parameter is sales. I'll just make a note then, if you are using the after read process, you should always have an after read parameter. Likewise with the before read parameter, because the event source may vary depending on what actually started the whole reread process. So just as a note there, make sure that the after read process and the before read process has a parameter. Now the reason that this program is called db.i.webinar 2501 is that this program that is running this, that I've created to run this webinar, will actually be put on the website a little bit later today. So if you're looking tomorrow or later on in the week, then this code will be in the code samples part of our website. Okay, so let's have a look at the code behind this now. So here is the program db.i.webinar 2501. Now there's only 2 events in this because I only need 2 events charted for this particular webinar. One being the after read, which is the after read slot on the client code, and the second one is the report, which is the event that will occur when the report is clicked. So we have a look at the after read process, and then we go to build sales report, and this is where things get meaty, I suppose. I've got a couple of variables at the top that I'm using for selections, which I'll explain a little later. So we're setting process report number equal to 1. So what that means directly is that this r.sales report, we have a look at the properties for that report, you'll see that the report number here is 1. This this program then needs to refer to that that container, if you like, as 1. So process report number is set to 1. So effectively all of the variables that DesignBais uses to construct an on-form report then are referred to process report number as process report number because these are individual subscripts, and there are 10 of these that, as I said at the start, with the 10 reports that you put on an on-form report, that you put on a form. Each one of these then can represent one of those reports. So in this case, process report number 1, output report, that's the variable to store the actual columnar and row data that appears on the on-form report. Output keys is the key behind some of those cells. So if we run this, it might be actually easier if I run this. So you can see here that there's 1, 2, 3, there's 8 columns on that particular report. So output keys is, let's say for instance this field here is clickable. Output keys makes it clickable when it is set up to correspond with the output anchor variable, and that'll get clearer in a minute. Output headers is the variable that contains the text that sits within the header. Output attribute is the display attributes of the individual cells. So you can see that these are right justified. Output attribute stores the values, stores the display attributes of these cells. This one here's got a color to highlight that particular cell. That is also in the output attribute. Output width, that is the width of each of the columns. Now the width of the column is a percentage, or so the numbers should add up to or close to 100. If you go over 100, it will truncate the column. They can be point values, so you can, if you've got lots of little columns, you can have 0.5, 0.2, and so on. That'll calculate the percentage of that, the percentage width of that particular cell on the report. The reason we do that is, as opposed to giving absolute widths, is that these reports can be put on a form with a percentage, as per the default that we looked at a little while ago. The default of that was 95%. What that will do is make this container 95% of the actual forms of the screen width. So having these as a percentage, that means that each of the columns will then grow to match the width of the screen. Otherwise that function's not possible. Okay, so that's output width. Output anchor basically says which columns on this report are clickable. So in this case, column 1 and column 3 are clickable. When output keys has a particular value in the row column position, that is what that actually turns on the cell. So this prepares the engine that produces the on-form reports as to which columns are potentially clickable, and the output keys then says, okay, if there's a key value in the cell, then that cell is clickable. Output mouse over. If I have a mouse over event, I'll just come back to this. If I have a mouse over style change, as I mouse over this, you can see that the style is changing, and it's becoming underlined, and the background color changes. So if we go back to the program now, you've also got output title. Now output title is if you want to put any text associated with the cell to give further explanation, but you can't fit it in the cell. As I hover on the cell, you can see there that it's giving that description, which is just an arbitrary description that I've made up, which basically says this is a product description for speaker. But that could be more detail associated with that particular row. So that's the output title variable. Okay, so now we're going to actually fill in some of those variables. I'll come back and explain output.ty a little bit later. So we've got output headers, so select, state, sale, product, quantity, unit price, extended price, tax, and total, and that is reflected here in the headings. Then we've got some widths. So the various widths, so in this case, select is 4% of the width of the report, or 4 over the total width, which this doesn't look like that's anywhere near 100. Then we've got some attributes. Now I'm building a variable called output at that I am using to describe the various attributes of each of the cells. So the first one is actually quite complex. I've got a standard align center tag, which basically says align the text in this cell centered. I've got cursor pointer, and cursor pointer, these are all CSS style attributes. So here I can, as I mouse over this particular cell, you'll see that the cursor is a pointer, and that will take the default pointer for the browser or the PC at that particular point in time. Then I've got a background URL. In this case, images checkbox off to.jpg, and in version 6, these are a standard. Oops, I'm sorry, just move that. These are a standard image. I've got no repeat and center. If I leave out the no repeat, the checkbox will be repeated in each of the cells until it fills the cells effectively. And center basically says align that background image in the center of that particular cell. I've got a padding left of 12 pixels, which I probably don't need for that particular cell, and a height of 25 pixels. So once I've set the height of one of the rows, then the rest of the rows follow suit. So all of these have a height of 25 pixels. Columns 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 have an align right as a standard property, standard style property. So there you can see they're all right aligned. Then I've got a DB report header attribute. Likewise with the normal column and row attributes that are looked after by the output attribute variable, there is also a supporting variable which is DB report header attribute. And if I don't use that, the standard style properties for headers will be used, and that comes from the style groups. I'll just bring this up on the screen now. So you see I have a standard report header, a standard report body, and a standard report mouse over event. If I build a search form, because search forms are essentially on-form reports, and the search form has the style of DBI Web 61, it will use these three styles as the basis of the search process. So the headers on the searches will have this as a standard. The detailed section will have this, in this case, DBV6 for data report detail as a standard, and any mouse over event. So as I mouse over the columns in the individual search screens, they will have this mouse over style. So that mouse over style is effectively what's causing that underline and the background color to occur on this particular screen. Right, so now if I use if I don't use DB report attribute, it'll just use the standard header style as I've just discussed, but it will inherit the first row's styling as far as positioning is concerned. So if I make this output attribute for this first column right justified, the header will be right justified automatically. Likewise for the rest of those columns. But because I'm using DB report header attribute, those styling characteristics are then overridden. So I'm making the height of the header 25 pixels, and I'm giving it a background color of maroon and a foreground color of white in this case. So that will be added to whatever class parameters are provided by the standard on-form report. And then the second set from columns 2 to 8, I've got cursor pointer again because the header is clickable, and I want people to know that as they mouse over that it is clickable. And you can see there that the select column has no function, so it doesn't have the mouse over. As I move on to these, it is, and effectively they're a sort column. That's why they're clickable, and I'll show you how that's done later. And they've got a background URL of images arrow down.gif. So effectively that's just putting the background image of this down arrow on the back of the cell. Again, no repeat, but this time it's right justified as opposed to being center justified, and that's bringing the image over to the right hand side of the cell. I'm setting the height to 25 pixels, which is probably superfluous there. I'm setting the background color to maroon again. I'm setting the color white, and I'm also adding a padding right of 15 pixels there. The reason I'm doing that is because I want the text to be 15 pixels to the left of that image. If not, because this is a background image, the text will override the image, so you'd end up having the CE then being on top of that particular background image. So I'm just putting some padding on that particular cell to get that to shift over. So that's my heading attributes now. So I can demonstrate that a little clearer, I suppose, if I just set that to 0, that point, recompile that program, and redraw the on-form report by putting in a different client code. You can see now the effect on that because there's no padding, the words are intermingling with the down arrows. So I'll put that back, and then that disappears. I mean that condition disappears. Okay, so that's the header attributes for this particular report. So then I've got some totaling variables, and I've got my other record which contains the sales transactions. I'm doing some totaling there, but here I'm filling a variable called output line. An output line is what I will eventually down here put into output report. At a row by row, I probably should change that to DL just to be consistent. So output report, row number in this case is DL because I'm looping through the number of lines up here, equals the output line. And as you can see, the output line 1, 2 is the date, and then the product description, and then the quantity, price, extended price, and so on, which corresponds to what is in this particular row here. So if we move on down here, temp attribute equals output attribute. So what I'm doing is I'm just moving out the value that is in output attribute into a temporary attribute. So all the align rights and the background images and things like that that was set up here, I'm just moving into this temporary attribute down here. And then saying if the sales total is greater than, effectively, I think it was 100 because it's a MD2. Yeah, if the extended price is more than 100, then I'm going to change the attribute to align right still, but I'm going to make the background color, in this case Indian red, color bloke. That's an interesting typo. Color block, font family Verdana and font size 7. That point. So what I'm really interested in is getting that Indian red into that particular string. So then I'm setting output attribute process report number for that row to be the temp.at, which is all the valued attributes. So all the valued attributes. That's an oxymoron. Each one of the multi-values in output attribute represents the individual columns. So when I put it in output attribute via a row, I'm now talking about rows and columns. Output keys equals DL. So I'm just in the first column, I'm putting the row number. That's all I'm putting in the keys. And I'm just doing that to demonstrate that I can make this particular cell active at that point. Output type, I'll come back and explain that a little bit later. An output mouse over, here I'm saying the standard class, and the class being, I'll just open up another window, the class being what you set up here in the style definition. So it's essentially a style definition. So in this case I am using, see, it might be easier if I just put this up into here. This one I'm using DB V6 Verdana report detail, and for the mouse over, so output mouse over is standard state when the mouse is not being displayed, when the mouse is not over a particular field, and then that is when the mouse is over that. That's the class when the mouse is over the field. So if we just have a look at that particular one in the style definition, you can see there that it's setting a background color of Alice Blue. It's setting a padding left of 2 pixels, some border styles and border colors, border widths, text decoration of underline, a cursor pointer and a height of 16 pixels in this instance. Because the cell's already been given a height of 25 pixels, that's being overridden. So you can see that the basic effect of that is to set the background color to Alice Blue and to set the underline property for the text that's in the cell. So that's what's happening in the mouse over event. An output title, you can see here, here's my text, this is a product description for the actual product description. You would have much more meaningful text in there than that. So effectively that has built the on-form report. Now I need to tell the DesignBais hub to actually update that. And I always do that with a 1,-1 because I want to be sure that if I'm updating multiple on-form reports at the time, that all of them get updated. Because if I go process refresh equals r.sales and process type equals r, if I also am updating another on-form report in this code, that other on-form report will also have process type equal to r and process refresh equals whatever that is, r.totals. So only one of them ever gets updated. So the best thing to do is have this sort of construct with the process type 1,-1 equals r. So that says I am updating an on-form report, and this process refresh equals r.sales says I'm updating the report named r.sales. There's another variable here because called db OFR spec. DesignBais on-form report specification. For the R.sales, I've got for the R.sales report, I've got a border style of solid in this instance. A lot of our clients have colors that the standard border that we put around on-form reports doesn't suit. They may want to make the on-form report transparent, so if there is a background image or something like that or watermark that they want to show through, then you can control that using this on-form report spec. And it is just to do with the container. It doesn't affect the details that are in the on-form report, because that's looked after by the output attributes and report header variables. It actually controls what the container looks like. So here, just as an example, if we set border style none, and just rerun this particular report, you can see now that this report has no border. And there are various border styles that you can put. You could put a background color, red or black or whatever suits your styling. So that's the on-form, the OFR spec. So we'll just have a look at the actual events associated with this particular report now. I'll just put that, just compile that program so we get the background color back. So I have a click event here on this header. So if I click that, we actually get a sort. The report comes up as effectively unsorted. So realistically, I probably shouldn't have those arrows there until the report's actually sorted. And when I click that tax, you can see that that's now changed the direction of the image to indicate that it's sorted a particular way. I'm not sure whether or not that is actually the right way, but anyway, you get the picture. So if I click that again, that'll change that particular column, that particular sort icon to lower, and then run the sort. So we'll just have a look at how that is achieved. Now that's achieved in a report click. So we'll go down to so here's the event. If the event is equal to report, go sub-report, come down to the report section, and I've got a row and a column reference. DB report cell is effectively split up. It's row dot column. So I'll break that up into row and column. The first thing I'm checking for here in this routine is if the event source is r.sales and not row. So in other words, if not row, row's 0, so go sub-sort the report. So we'll have a look at this sort report routine. I've got a sort list variable here that describes the various sorts to be performed on each of the columns. So there's this first one, which is the date, is a date right justified. So it's effectively convert it to a date and sort right justified. The next one is a straight alpha sort, so that's a left justified sort. Then we've got the numeric sorts, which are all right justified sorts. That just tells the sort routine how to sort the numbers that are on the on-form report, because I haven't given the on-form report any dictionary names or anything like that at this particular point. So I need to explain to the on-form report how that's done. Now let's say the first column was actually a time. That would be TR, as in a time. Convert the data that's in the report to a time and then sort it that way. So I'll leave that as date. So then call dbi.g.sort on-form report. That's a standard DesignBais function. Pass the event source, r.sales, pass the column number that I'm going to sort. So in this example, I've been sorting this one over here, which is column 7, and pass it the sort list for one column, column, so it'll pass the R in there, so it says sort that right justified. Then I have some other code here, which is basically just looking after not much actually, because these are using the wrong variables. But essentially, this is just to keep the tags that I've got against the left-hand column sorted as well. I'll come back and explain that a little bit later. DB store 1 column 2 1 comma column. In this case, DB store 2 I'm just using as a store variable just to store the value of the last direction for that cell. There is a variable called DB last direction, and that basically says, am I sorting this ascending or descending? So if it's not descending in this instance, arrow down. If it's ascending, then arrow if it's descending, then arrow up. That's probably around the wrong way, but anyway, I think you understand what it's doing. And in this case, I'm rerunning DB report header attribute to pass in this parameter here the new arrow for that. So that's going to rebuild the report as far as the sort is concerned, and also rebuild the header to ensure that it's going to get the new background with the correct image in that. Okay, so that's effectively sorting. So this one routine then will sort the entire report based on what column is provided. And as I said, this is a standard DesignBais routine. So the only time that you would want to add your own code into this is if you are doing anything to register click events or something like that. And in this case, I'm doing that. I am registering a click event every time the user clicks in the cell. You can see that this is ticked, and I'll do the same there. When they click back in the cell, then I'm turning that particular tick off. And that's really quite a simple thing to do. I'll just go back up to the report event again. So this time I've got another event, which is case event source equals r.sales and col. So I've got past the 0 row case, and now we're looking at if there is an actual column that was clicked. And if the column is 1, go sub the update selection routine. Have a look at the update selection routine. It's only half a dozen lines of code, and it's using a variable called DB report update. DB report update updates an individual cell on an on-form report, which saves you having to rebuild the entire report which can be a reasonably lengthy process. If you've got an on-form report with hundreds of lines on it, it's much easier to just update a single row. Okay, so the report update, the name of the report. Update 2 is the row. Update 3 is the column. Update 4, if I had text in that particular cell, I could put text in that cell in DB report update 4. And in this case, I'm saying, is DB store 1 attribute row equal to a Y, so it's already been clicked. If it's already been clicked, turn the Y off, get rid of the Y from the store variable, and set the background image to images checkbox off 2. So in other words, the image checkbox off. So that turns that checkbox off, or basically replaces the image. And if it's not already a yes, set it to yes, and click and change the image to the checkbox on. So effectively, as I click this, that variable wasn't set to a Y in that case. The checkbox is turned on. If I click it again, the image is switched. So that's a fairly simple mechanism that that you can use to do multi-line selections if you want to then do some further processing. The next thing that I want to look at is the output title variable. Oh no, I've already shown you that. Sorry, I've already shown you the output title variable. I've already shown you that this is over 100. We've got this other box down here now, which is our totaling, and it's fairly straightforward. I've just got an r.totals at the bottom. It is process report number 2. I'll just explain this box here while we're here. This report cleared report on any write or clear event. What that does is that if you've got, say in this case, it's a client being displayed for, say, client maintenance, and then there's a submit button on this form or a clear button on the form. When I hit the submit button, I want the on-form reports to be cleared automatically. So anytime there is a write or a clear and this flag is set, the on-form reports will get cleared. There are instances where I don't want them cleared on write events. I only want them cleared when the clear button is pressed, so do not clear the report on write event. So you might have a situation, as with the field properties form, the list down the bottom of the field properties form stays there until, whilst you're looking at the same file, the list will stay there until you hit the clear button, and that is done effectively with that parameter. Then there is the do not clear the report ever, which basically says the DesignBais engines will not modify this report at all. It won't clear the report. It is up to you effectively to clear the reports. So the report number on this is report number 2, and we'll go to the program now that the program code that builds that particular report, which is just right at the bottom of the first one. Right, so here we're talking about process report number 2, output report. They're all cleared. These are cleared anyway. It's just something that we do as a habit. So these variables are cleared for you by the time you come in. Your routine is called. I've got 1 to 6 in this case. I've got output headers set to a space. The reason we do that, even though output headers is not actually displayed on this report, output headers is the trigger to say there is something potentially in this column, process this report, and if output headers is null, the report won't get processed at all. It's just a performance thing, so just to save a lot of the setup in the on-form reports. If there's nothing in headers, the on-form report doesn't get built. So I always just put a space in output headers just to be sure. Then I'm setting the output attributes to align right for the columns and a height of 18 pixels. But if the number of lines on the report is 11 or more, I want to set the height to 30 pixels. And the reason for that is that scroll bars in browsers are not a particularly intelligent creature, and you do have to code to support them a little bit. You can see here C0025, the client, has more than 11 lines in the on-form report. And what I've done is I've set the height of this totals column to be greater than what it actually is, what is allowed by this particular on-form report. So it's put a little scroll bar there. And what that's done is effectively made this row, this on-form report here, the same width as the on-form report above it. If I don't do that, and I'll just demonstrate this, if number of lines is greater than, sorry, that should just be less than, I'll just make sure that number's always there. So if I come back in here, I'll just key in a different number, come back to this one. If I don't do that, you can see that this on-form report now doesn't allow for the width of the scroll bar and the columns go out of alignment. Now you can try and find the best average for that, but the best way to do it is the way that I've just done it, which is unless somebody out there knows a better way. But the best way I found I should state that is to effectively set the height greater, so that the height of this is 30 and it is greater than the depth of the on-form report container, so it puts the scroll bar back. I've also got a vertical aligned top associated with that. That's just to ensure that the numbers are going to print and that totals value is going to print in the top of that particular cell. Otherwise it might center, and if it's centered then the vertical alignment will be out slightly. So so when I compile that now and get the 25 back up again, oops, you can see that that is allowing for that. Now if you think that that is a little messy, as I do, you can always just get a blank white image and increase its Z index so it sits in front of an on-form report, and just cover that, and so that way the end user actually can't click on that particular value. And then you can specify whether or not, based on the number of rows, whether that image is visible or not. It's a little bit more work, and it's entirely up to the way you want to style your application. Okay, so there's 6 columns. I've set the height, and I'm setting the header to height to 0. I could have just filled the header, I suppose, as opposed to filling the report detail. It's just, again, that's a habit thing. I just set the header height to 0 and then fill the actual detail section. Just gives me the basic sort of standard controls as far as output attributes and things. I just find it a little bit easier. So then I'm filling the 6 columns that are left with the various totals. I've got the output report and output attribute set to fill the details associated with those total lines and the output attributes associated with those. The process refresh in this case is r.totals, so I'm saying update the totals on form report and setting the process type to R. So effectively what we end up with is this situation. And there's lots of styling that you could do there, setting background colors if you wanted to, if you want to highlight that, if you want to set a border on, so you get an equals, so you get sort of a line on the top, you can do that. That's just standard CSS properties. That's a fairly straightforward thing to do. That's really about it as far as on-form reports is concerned. I think that's covered all of the major topics as far as the building, displaying and controlling the click events, sorting and being able to put images in the background and control those. It is actually a very simple process, and as I said, the program that supports this will be on our website a little bit later today. I'm sorry, somebody's just asked the obvious question that I'd forgotten about. Thank you. Input fields. Input fields. So here I've got a variable called output type, an output or output.ty. In this case, and it's just set to 3 blank value marks at the moment. So I'm going to put an I in the 4th column. And when I attempt to compile that, and now rerun this particular report, you will see that this is now an input field. So when I type something into that cell, you're probably not seeing it, but that is actually calling the server at this particular point in time. And what I can, I'll go into the program up here, case col equals 4, dbds db value. db value is the value that is entered in the into the cells. So you can see their DB value 3434 in this case. Now DesignBais does not do anything to validate those cell values. It doesn't do anything to store those values. If you want to store them, you can store them in say a DB store variable yourself. So you could put your standard IER.texts and reset the values and do all of that sort of thing. So I could say if DB value equals 55, then IER.text equals no 55s or something like that. Just as you would in a standard input field, though the standard design-based functions for controlling input is not handled in this on-form report, because there's too many things that you can do around it with the styling attributes and stuff like that for us to control that. So that's why you basically need to look after the storage of those variables yourself. I've got a question asked there, is there any controlling for right justified and things like that? That depends on the style that you've used for that particular field. In this case, my styling is a fairly straightforward one. I don't really have a style set up to handle this input field, but you can set up your standard default mechanisms as far as styling is concerned, and then they will go into this on-form report. Yeah, CSS controlled. Somebody's just asked. So that's how our input fields are handled in on-form reports. Can you do multiple? Somebody just asked, can you do multiple sorts on an on-form report, sort by product and then item? No is the simple answer to that. You could call the sort routine. I'm not sure actually. I'd have to think about the way that you would actually do that. The standard routine is only used to sort in one direction. All of the variables that are all of the content of the on-form report is written out into in variables in the sessions file. If you want to know what they are because you want to build a multiple sort criteria, as the question's just been asked, more than happy if you email support@designbais.com to tell you what the construct of those session variables are, so you can read and sort them yourself, which a lot of our clients are already doing. So I presume you could add multiple sort by buttons onto the form. Yes, you could. That's entirely up. That's entirely up to you. Somebody's just asked, is there any plans for intrinsic pagination controls? No, is the simple answer for that. On-form reports tend to perform really well up until sort of the 1,000+ line mark, and then you really need to introduce some paging, because you're downloading those values to the screen, and there is some overhead in doing that, less than a multi-value control, but still quite a lot of details. A lot of work involved in getting that data down and then formatting it. So you are best, if you can, to produce some sort of paging, and a lot of as I said, a lot of applications that are out there do have their own paging mechanisms where effectively they will just write to on-form reports and produce pages of 20 lines or 50 lines or something like that. One of the things that I would like to mention is that I've used in this example lots of styling. So here, this particular attribute could have been put into a class definition. So instead of me sending 20, 50, 100 lots of this, I could say output attribute equals class, if I could type, class equals my checkbox or something like that. And then that means that I'm only sending that to the client as opposed to all of that for each individual cell. So that can be a much faster way, and that reduces the data that's transferred, and then also increases the speed of the on-form report as a result. I think that's the last question of note in this webinar. Are there any other? If there are any other questions, I'm more than happy to ask them. Ask them, answer them, I should say. So if not, well, we'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you very much. And as I said, look for the code that supports this on-form report on our website shortly. Thank you.